Welcome, everyone, and thank you for spending this quiet moment with me today. This is a story about slow change and the kind that lasts forever. If you feel stuck, tired, or disappointed, this story is for you. Stay with me, breathe slowly, and let us begin step by step. He did not change fast, like the people around him expected him to. Others seemed to transform overnight, smiling wide, suddenly confident and unstoppable. He tried too, but his progress always felt quiet, slow, and almost invisible. Every morning looked the same, and every night ended with the same regret. He told himself, "Tomorrow I will be different," and believed it for hours. Then tomorrow arrived, and he repeated the old pattern without noticing. Late nights became normal, scrolling until his eyes felt heavy and dry. Mornings became rushed, pressing snooze, bargaining with the alarm again. He would whisper, "Just 10 more minutes," like it was harmless comfort. But 10 became 20, and 20 became a habit he could not break. At work, he looked busy, but his mind stayed tired and unfocused. Small tasks felt heavier when his heart carried guilt from yesterday. When coworkers joked about discipline, he smiled, but felt small inside. One coworker said, "You always talk big, but you never move," and laughed. He laughed too, pretending it was funny, pretending it did not hurt. But on the way home, those words repeated inside him like a quiet echo. He passed people jogging, people studying, people building something after work. He felt like life was running forward while he stood still in place. At home, he dropped his bag, sat down and stared at the ceiling. He thought, "Why is change so easy for others but hard for me?" His phone buzzed with a message from his friend Mark, popping on screen. Mark wrote, "Gym at 6 tomorrow, you coming or not?" with a smile emoji. He typed, "Yes," then deleted it, then typed, "Maybe," and sent that instead. A minute later, Mark replied, "Maybe means no, bro," and left it there. He felt embarrassed, even though nobody was watching his face in that room. He said aloud, "I am not lazy, I am just tired, trying to feel better." But the truth felt closer than his excuses, and it made his chest tight. He opened social media again, hoping noise could cover the quiet guilt. Videos played, jokes played, motivation clips played, and nothing changed. He stared at a quote that said, "Discipline is freedom," and scoffed quietly. "Easy to say," he murmured, "you do not live my life," and kept scrolling. Then his phone battery died, and the screen went dark without warning. The room became silent, like it was waiting for him to hear himself. He sat there, hands resting still, listening to his own breathing. And for once, he did not run away from that silence again. He whispered, "I keep failing," and the words sounded heavier than before. He expected anger, but what he felt was something softer and deeper. He felt tired, not from work, but from disappointing himself repeatedly. He remembered every promise he broke, every plan he abandoned halfway. He said quietly, "I do not need motivation. I need a new life." A thought rose gently inside him, not loud, not dramatic, just honest. What if he stopped waiting for a perfect day to begin? What if he began with something small, something simple, something possible? He stood up, walked to the kitchen, and poured a glass of water. He drank slowly, like he was washing away the noise in his mind. Then he opened a notebook that had been empty for months. On the first page he wrote, "One small habit, every day, carefully." He stared at the sentence, then added, "No big promises, just practice." He felt nervous, like he was making a commitment he might fail again. But he also felt a small spark of control, and it surprised him. He wrote 3 tiny rules, keeping them simple enough to actually follow. Rule 1. Sleep earlier, even if the night feels lonely. Rule 2. Wake up once, no snooze, no bargaining, no excuses. Rule 3. Finish one small task daily, then stop and rest peacefully. He looked at the list and whispered, "This is not impressive, but it is real." His mind tried to fight back, saying, "This will not change anything." He answered that voice softly, Maybe not today, but someday it will. He walked to his bed, placed his phone far away, and turned off lights. The room felt strange without the usual glow from the screen. His heart beat a little faster, like he was stepping into discomfort. He said quietly, "Discomfort is not danger," and closed his eyes. Sleep came slowly, but for once he was proud of the attempt. The alarm rang in the early morning and the room felt cold. His hand reached out automatically, searching for the snooze button again. He froze, remembering the notebook, remembering his promise from last night. He whispered, "One small habit," and forced himself to sit up. His body complained, but he moved anyway, slow but steady. He walked to the bathroom, washed his face, and stared at his reflection. His eyes looked tired, but there was a new seriousness there. He said to the mirror, "Not fast, but forever," and nodded gently. In the kitchen, he made simple breakfast without touching his phone. He sat in silence, listening to the world waking outside his window. He felt something rare, the feeling of starting a day with intention. At work, he arrived on time, not early, but not embarrassed anymore. Mark passed by and raised an eyebrow, noticing his calmer energy. Mark said, "You look awake," finally, with a teasing smile. He smiled back and replied, "I am trying something small, carefully." Mark asked, "What, a new app?" and laughed softly. He replied, "No, I am going to bed earlier," and meant it. Mark paused, then said, "That is boring," and smiled with respect. He nodded and said, "Boring is fine if it saves my life." During the day, he focused on one task, just one, like he promised. When his mind drifted, he brought it back, gently, without self-hate. He finished that task, then wrote a small check mark on paper. That tiny mark felt like proof that he could keep promises again. At night he felt the pull to scroll, but he remembered the notebook. He said softly, "I will not win by feelings. I will win by practice." He placed his phone away, turned off lights, and chose sleep again. It did not feel like success, but it felt like the right direction. And that was how his change began, quietly, without anyone cheering. Not fast, not loud, not perfect, but steady enough to keep going. The next morning arrived quietly, without excitement, without any dramatic feeling. The alarm rang again, and his body wanted comfort like always. His eyes opened slowly, and for a second he thought about sleeping more. Then he remembered the notebook, the promise, and the small habit rule. He whispered softly, "Just get up," and pushed himself forward. His feet touched the cold floor, and he felt fully awake. It was not easy, but it was real effort happening. In the bathroom mirror, he looked at himself and smiled lightly. "Still tired," he said quietly, "but still trying," and nodded again. He washed his face and felt fresh water clear his sleepy mind. The house was silent, and the early light filled the room slowly. He made breakfast and sat down without opening his phone. For once, his thoughts were calm instead of rushed. He breathed deeply and enjoyed the peaceful start. At work, challenges came as usual. Nothing had magically changed. Deadlines still existed. Problems still appeared. People still complained. But something inside him was different this time. Instead of feeling overwhelmed, he chose one task to focus on. He told himself, "Finish this first, then move on." A coworker walked by and sighed loudly. "This place is exhausting," she said with frustration. He replied softly, "Yeah, but one thing at a time helps." She looked surprised and said, "You sound positive today." He smiled and answered, "I am just trying something new." Hours passed, and he completed his first task carefully. He checked it twice and submitted it with confidence. That small success gave him energy he had not felt before. During lunch, he usually scrolled endlessly on his phone. This time, he took a short walk outside instead. The air felt fresh, and his body felt lighter. He noticed small details like trees moving in the wind. Life felt slower, but his mind felt clearer. Back at work, he focused on another small task. When stress tried to rise, he paused and breathed. He reminded himself, calm first, then act. The day ended, and he realized he had finished everything planned. It was not a perfect day, but it was productive. On the way home, Mark called him on the phone. "Hey," Mark said, "you still alive over there?" He laughed and replied, "Yeah, just actually working today." Mark joked, "Who are you and what did you do with my friend?" He smiled and said, "I am trying to change slowly." Mark paused and answered seriously, "Good man, keep it up." Those simple words encouraged him more than Mark knew. At home, tiredness came again, heavy and tempting. The couch looked comfortable, and the phone waited beside him. He sat down and felt the old habit pulling him back. "Just a few minutes," a voice whispered inside. He closed his eyes and thought about his morning promise. He stood up again and said softly, "Not today." Instead, he opened his notebook and wrote one sentence. "Day 2, I kept my promise." That small line filled him with quiet pride. He read a few pages of a book before dinner. The words felt easier to understand than before. After eating, he prepared for bed earlier again. The urge to scroll was strong, but he resisted. He placed his phone away and turned off the light. Lying in bed, he thought about how different the day felt. Nothing amazing happened, yet everything felt better. He whispered, "Small steps really do matter." Sleep came faster than the night before. The next days followed the same simple rhythm. Wake up, focus on one thing, breathe, repeat. Some mornings he failed and slept late again, but instead of quitting, he corrected himself the next day. He said, "One bad morning does not cancel progress." Slowly, his streak of good days grew longer. His energy improved and his mind felt sharper. People at work trusted him more with responsibilities. His confidence grew quietly, without anyone noticing much. One evening, Mark met him after work for coffee. Mark looked at him and said, "You seem different lately." He asked, "Did something big happen in your life?" He smiled gently and replied, "Nothing big, just small changes." Mark nodded slowly, thinking about that answer. "You look happier," Mark said honestly. He replied, "I feel in control for the first time." Mark raised his cup and said, "To small changes then." They both smiled and clinked their cups softly. Walking home later, he felt proud but humble. He knew the journey was not finished yet. There would be hard days ahead, no doubt. But now he trusted himself to continue. He was not changing fast like others, but he was changing forever, step by step. And that made all the difference. Days continued passing quietly, each one built on small, steady habits. Some mornings felt easy, while others felt heavy and slow. When tiredness appeared, he reminded himself why he started. He said softly, "Not fast, but forever," and kept moving. At work, responsibilities increased as people trusted him more. His manager called him one afternoon and said calmly, "I have noticed your focus improving these days," she explained. "You handle tasks better now and finish on time," she added. He felt surprised but grateful for the recognition. "Thank you," he replied. "I am trying to be more disciplined." She smiled and said, "Keep this up, it will take you far." Those words stayed in his mind all day long. For years he felt invisible. Now he felt valued. That simple change boosted his confidence even more. During lunch breaks, he continued walking outside peacefully. He listened to birds, watched people, and cleared his thoughts. Stress slowly lost its control over his emotions. When problems came, he no longer panicked. He paused, breathed, and focused on solutions calmly. One afternoon, a difficult project arrived suddenly. The old him would have complained and delayed everything. This time he broke it into small tasks immediately. He wrote each step carefully in his notebook. "Finish part 1 today," he whispered, staying focused. Hours passed slowly as he worked with patience. Mistakes happened, but he corrected them without frustration. By the end of the day, part 1 was complete. It was not perfect, but it was progress. At home that night, he felt proud again. He opened his notebook and wrote another line. Challenges are easier when taken step by step. He smiled gently at his growing list of lessons. The next morning, he woke up tired again. Rain hit the windows and made the bed feel warmer. His body begged him to stay under blankets. He closed his eyes and whispered quietly, "Comfort today means regret tomorrow," remembering his past. He slowly stood up and started the day again. It was harder than usual, but he succeeded. At work, the second part of the project waited. He felt nervous, but also prepared this time. He focused on one section at a time. Colleagues noticed his calm attitude under pressure. One coworker said, "How do you stay so relaxed?" He replied softly, "I stopped trying to do everything at once." She nodded and said, "I should try that too." Those moments made him realize he was changing others too, not by teaching loudly, but by living differently. Weeks continued passing with steady improvement. His sleep improved and his mornings felt lighter. His mind felt sharper and his body stronger. The small daily walk turned into light exercise. He added stretching and breathing in the mornings. Nothing extreme, just simple movements every day. Slowly, his energy increased more than before. One evening, he stood in front of the mirror again. He noticed his posture was straighter now. His eyes looked brighter and more confident. He whispered, "I am becoming someone new." But then he corrected himself softly. "Not new," he said, "just better." He understood that growth was not about becoming perfect. It was about becoming stronger than yesterday. Some nights, doubts still came quietly. "What if this doesn't last?" a voice asked. He answered calmly, "That I will start again." That answer gave him peace. He realized progress was never a straight line. There would always be ups and downs. The important part was never quitting completely. Even slow steps were moving forward. One weekend, Mark invited him to hang out late. "Come on," Mark said, "just one late night." He thought for a moment and smiled gently. "I can come," he said, "but I will leave early." Mark laughed and replied, "You really changed, man." He answered, "I am just protecting my mornings now." They enjoyed talking and laughing for a while. When it was time, he stood up and said goodbye. Walking home early felt strange but good. He knew old habits were losing their power. Back in bed, he felt proud of his choice. He whispered, "Discipline is freedom," remembering the quote. This time he believed it deeply. He fell asleep feeling calm and strong. Each day was shaping him into someone better, not fast, not loudly, but permanently. Months passed quietly, carrying his small habits forward every day. What once felt hard slowly became part of his normal life. Waking early no longer felt like a fight each morning. His body adjusted, and his mind welcomed the calm starts. He no longer counted days, he simply lived the routine. The notebook became full of simple lessons and progress. Each page showed how far he had come slowly. One morning his manager called him into the office. She said, "There is a new position opening soon." He felt nervous but listened carefully. "I think you should apply," she continued softly. "You have shown growth, responsibility, and consistency." His heart beat faster with excitement and fear together. He replied, "I never thought I was ready." She smiled and said, "Ready is built, not waited for." Those words stayed in his mind for days. That evening he walked home thinking deeply. The old him would have doubted and avoided. This time he opened his laptop and started the application. He worked slowly, checking every detail carefully. He wrote honestly about his journey and effort. When finished, he sat back and breathed deeply. "No matter what happens, I tried," he whispered. Days later, the waiting tested his patience. Doubt tried to return quietly in his thoughts. "What if they say no?" the voice asked again. He answered calmly, "Then I will keep improving." That peaceful response surprised even himself. Meanwhile, he continued his habits without stopping. He woke early, worked steadily, and rested wisely. He did not allow hope to distract his discipline. One afternoon, his phone buzzed with a message. It was from his manager asking to meet. His hands felt slightly shaky as he walked. Inside the office, she smiled warmly. "I have good news," she said gently. "You got the position," she added proudly. For a moment, he could not speak. His chest felt full with emotion. "Thank you," he finally whispered with a smile. She said, "You earned this through effort." Walking out, he felt like crying happily, not because of the job, but because of growth. He called Mark immediately. "I got the promotion," he said excitedly. Mark shouted, "I knew it, man, you deserve it." They laughed together like old times. That evening, he celebrated quietly at home. He did not need a party or noise. He opened his notebook and wrote carefully. "Small steps created a big moment today." He stared at the words with gratitude. He realized success felt peaceful, not loud. It was the result of steady work. The next days brought new responsibilities. The work was harder and required focus. Sometimes he felt overwhelmed again, but now he had tools to handle it. He broke tasks into steps calmly. He breathed when stress appeared. He asked for help when needed. Mistakes still happened occasionally, but he fixed them instead of hiding. People respected his honesty and effort. Slowly he became someone others trusted. One new co-worker said, "You seem very disciplined." He smiled and replied, "I just practice daily." That simple answer explained everything. At home, he kept his habits strong. Some nights he felt tired and tempted, but he remembered how far he came. He whispered, "Do not stop now." And he continued choosing growth over comfort. One evening he sat by the window again, the same place where he once felt stuck. This time the feeling was different. He felt hopeful and proud. He said softly, "Slow change really works." The city lights outside looked peaceful. He realized life did not need rushing. It needed consistency and patience, and those two things had changed him. He smiled quietly, knowing the journey continued, not fast, but for everlasting. The new position brought challenges he had never faced before. Meetings were longer and decisions carried more responsibility. At first he felt unsure about his ability. A small voice whispered, "What if you fail again?" He closed his eyes briefly and breathed slowly. "I will learn," he said quietly to himself. On his first week, mistakes happened quickly. He sent a report with missing details. His manager called him and said calmly, "Check your work more carefully next time." He felt embarrassed but not broken. "I understand," he replied softly. "I will fix it." Instead of feeling ashamed, he stayed late correcting it. He reviewed every page slowly and carefully. When finished, he sent the corrected version confidently. His manager replied, "Good job fixing it quickly." That simple message gave him courage. He realized mistakes were not the end. They were part of growth and learning. Each day brought something new to handle. Some tasks were confusing at first, but he asked questions instead of pretending. "Can you explain this part again?" he asked one coworker. The coworker smiled and helped without judgment. He felt grateful and less afraid to learn. Slowly, the work started making sense. His confidence grew with each lesson learned. At lunch, Mark visited him one day. Mark said, "Look at you, big office now." He laughed and replied, "Still the same guy, just trying harder." Mark nodded and said, "I am proud of you." Those words touched his heart deeply. He remembered days when nobody believed in him. Now people were seeing his effort. One evening after a long day, he felt exhausted. The couch looked inviting like before. His phone was beside him, waiting. For a moment, the old habit returned. "Just rest tonight," the voice whispered again. He sat quietly and thought about his goals. He thought about how far he had come. He stood up and said softly, "Rest later." He opened his notebook and reviewed his plans. He finished one small task instead of quitting. That action made him feel strong again. He understood discipline was built by choices, not by feelings or motivation. Some days motivation disappeared completely, but discipline kept him moving forward. Weeks passed with steady improvement. He handled meetings with more confidence. He spoke up when ideas came to mind. Colleagues listened and respected his input. One coworker said, "You always stay calm." He smiled and replied, "I learned it slowly." Calmness became one of his strengths. When problems arose, he solved them patiently. Instead of reacting, he responded thoughtfully. At home, his routine remained strong. Early sleep, early mornings, simple habits. The life he once thought boring now felt powerful. It gave him peace and direction. One night he wrote another lesson in his notebook. Comfort delays dreams, discipline builds them. He underlined the sentence softly. He knew that truth from experience now. He remembered nights wasted scrolling endlessly. Those nights felt empty compared to now. Now his days felt full and meaningful. He realized happiness was not excitement. It was progress and self-respect. The more he grew, the more he believed. Slow change was shaping a better future, and he was ready for more challenges ahead because he knew how to face them calmly. As time continued moving forward, his growth became more natural. He no longer forced himself to follow habits every day. They simply became part of who he was now. Waking early felt normal instead of painful. Focusing at work felt easier and calmer. His mind no longer jumped between distractions constantly. One morning, his manager stopped him in the hallway. "I want you to lead the next project," she said confidently. He felt surprised and nervous at the same time. "Are you sure I am ready?" he asked softly. She smiled and replied, "You are more ready than you think." Those words reminded him of how far he had come. Years ago, he would have said no immediately. Now he took a deep breath and said, "I would try my best." The project was bigger than anything before. Many people depended on his decisions. At first, the pressure felt heavy on his chest, but he remembered his simple method. Pause, breathe, break into small steps. He gathered his team and spoke calmly. "We will handle this step by step," he said gently. One coworker asked nervously, "What if it is too much?" He replied, "We will learn as we go together." His calmness spread across the room slowly. Everyone felt more confident working with him. They divided tasks and started working carefully. Each day brought new problems to solve. Sometimes plans failed and had to change, but instead of panicking, he stayed steady. "Let us fix it calmly," he would say. His team trusted his leadership more each day. They finished small goals one by one. Progress was slow but strong. Late evenings came with tired bodies, but nobody felt hopeless anymore. They felt proud of their teamwork. One night, Mark called him again. "Man, you sound busy these days," Mark laughed. He replied, "Busy but happy." Mark said, "Remember when you hated mornings?" He smiled and answered, "I cannot imagine sleeping late now." Mark paused and said quietly, "You really changed." He replied softly, "Not fast, but forever." Weeks passed and the project reached completion. The final presentation day arrived. His heart beat faster as he stood in front. He looked at his team and nodded gently. "Let us begin," he said confidently. The presentation went smoothly from start to end. Questions were answered clearly and calmly. His manager smiled proudly during the meeting. After it ended, she stood up and said, "This project was handled beautifully." Everyone clapped softly in the room. He felt warmth fill his chest, not from pride, but from gratitude. His team thanked him for leading them well. He thanked them back for trusting him. Walking out of the room, he felt stronger inside. Not because of success, but because of growth. He remembered the man he used to be, always tired, always delaying, always doubting. That man felt far away now. Yet he was thankful for that past. Without it, he would never value change. That evening, he sat quietly with his notebook. He wrote another line slowly. "Leadership starts with discipline and calmness." He closed the notebook and smiled. Life still had challenges ahead. Nothing was suddenly perfect, but he was ready to face whatever came. Because he had built strength patiently, not fast, but forever. After the successful project, life did not suddenly become easy. New challenges appeared almost every week. More responsibilities came with higher expectations. Some days felt heavy again like before, but this time he did not feel scared. He reminded himself pressure means growth. One afternoon, his manager called him again. "There is another opportunity coming," she explained calmly. "It will require more leadership and long hours." He listened carefully and felt his heart race. "Do you think I can handle it?" he asked honestly. She smiled and said, "I know you can." Those words filled him with quiet confidence. He accepted the opportunity without hesitation. The next weeks became very busy. Early mornings turned into long, productive days. Sometimes he returned home tired and silent. His body wanted rest more than anything, but his mind stayed focused on progress. One night, sitting on the couch, exhaustion hit hard. He whispered, "I deserve a break tonight." The phone was in his hand again. The old habit tried to return slowly. He stared at the screen and felt temptation. Then he remembered his journey. He remembered the nights he wasted before. He remembered the man who felt stuck. He placed the phone down quietly. "No," he said softly, "not going back." Instead, he stretched, breathed, and rested properly. Not escaping, just caring for himself wisely. That balance helped him stay strong. He learned discipline did not mean punishment. It meant choosing what helped his future. Some weekends he rested fully. Other weekends he prepared for coming tasks. He no longer felt guilty for resting. He used rest as fuel, not escape. His health improved slowly and steadily. His mind stayed clear even during stress. People around him admired his calm energy. One coworker said, "You never seem to panic." He smiled and replied, "I learned to pause first." Pause became his secret power. When emails felt overwhelming, he paused. When deadlines approached, he paused. When emotions rose, he paused. Then he acted with clarity. This simple habit saved him many times. He solved problems faster than before. He made better decisions calmly. Even when mistakes happened, he stayed steady. One evening, Mark visited him at home. Mark looked around and said, "Your place feels peaceful." He laughed and replied, "My life feels peaceful now." Mark sat down and asked seriously, "How did you really change like this?" He thought for a moment and answered slowly, "I stopped waiting to feel ready. I started doing small things every day. I stayed consistent even when it felt boring." Mark nodded quietly, listening closely. "So you didn't become different overnight?" Mark asked. He smiled gently and said, "No, I became different forever." Mark smiled proudly and said, "I want that too." He placed a hand on Mark's shoulder. "Start small," he said, "and never quit." That night, after Mark left, he felt grateful. Grateful for growth, lessons, and second chances. He sat near the window again like months ago. The same view, but a different man inside. He whispered softly, "Slow change saved my life." The city lights shined quietly outside. Life still moved fast around him, but inside he felt calm and strong. He knew challenges would never disappear. But now he had the tools to face them. Not with fear, not with excuses. With discipline, calmness, and consistency. He smiled knowing the journey continued. Not fast, but forever changing him. Time continued moving forward, carrying his new life with steady rhythm. Challenges never stopped coming, but his strength kept growing quietly. He no longer wished for easy days without problems. He wished for wisdom to handle whatever appeared calmly. One morning, while walking to work, he smiled softly. He realized he no longer rushed through life blindly. He moved with purpose and clear direction now. Every step felt meaningful, even the slow ones. At work, he guided others with patience and kindness. New team members often asked him for advice. "How do you stay so focused?" one young coworker asked. He smiled gently and replied, "I build my days slowly." "Small habits create big changes," he added calmly. The coworker nodded, feeling inspired by his words. He never spoke loudly about success or motivation. His life itself became the lesson for others. One evening, his manager called him into her office again. She said, "You have become one of our strongest leaders." He felt grateful but stayed humble inside. "Thank you for trusting me," he replied softly. She smiled and said, "You earned this through consistency." Walking out, he remembered the days of doubt. The days when waking up felt impossible. The days when excuses controlled his life. Those days felt like another lifetime now. At home that night, he opened his old notebook. The first page still read, "One small habit every day." He slowly flipped through the pages. Each line showed growth, lessons, and progress. Tears quietly filled his eyes, not from sadness but from pride. He whispered, "I kept going." He remembered how slow it felt at the beginning, how boring it seemed to wake early and stay disciplined. But now he understood something powerful. Slow change was the strongest kind of change. Fast motivation fades. Strong habits last forever. He stood near the window once more, the same place where he once felt lost. Now it felt like a place of peace. He said softly, "I didn't change fast, but I changed forever." Life still had hard moments ahead. There would still be failures and struggles. But he was no longer afraid of them. Because he trusted himself now. He trusted his habits. He trusted his calm mind. He trusted his steady effort. He knew he could always start again if needed. He knew progress was always possible, not by rushing, but by staying consistent. This story is not about becoming perfect. It is about becoming better, step by step. It is about choosing growth over comfort. It is about discipline over excuses. It is about calm over panic, and consistency over quitting. If you are feeling stuck today, remember his journey. You do not need to change fast. You only need to start small. One habit, one choice, one day at a time. Slow progress will build a strong future. Thank you for staying with this story until the end. I hope it gave you peace, strength, and motivation. Keep practicing step by step. Keep choosing better habits every day. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to support the channel by subscribing and following for more calm, motivational stories. Your journey can change too. Not fast, but forever.